Let me tell you how my life turned into a battleground over a set of keys. A battle that spun so far out of control, it exposed a criminal empire hiding behind a picket fence and the polite smiles of a homeowners association. If you think HOA stories are just about ugly mailboxes or grass being half an inch too tall, buckle up. Because what happened to me to my family's legacy might just make you rethink the whole idea of community leadership. It started on a crisp October morning, the kind where you step outside, and the world smells like pine needles, sawdust, and the memory of childhood summers. That was the morning Brenda Hartwell, our self-declared HOA queen, stomped onto my grandfather's property and demanded, "You don't belong here. Hand over those keys now." Designer boots, perfect hair voice cold enough to frost a windshield. I should have seen the storm coming. But this was my home, 40 acres of Colorado wilderness passed down through 3 generations. Not happening, lady. Not today. Her smile turned brittle. "Keep those keys then, but I'm calling the police." She did. 20 minutes later, I'm showing my family's deed to a pair of deputies while a crowd of neighbors watches like it's the 4th of July parade. Imagine being accused of stealing your own inheritance on the front porch your grandfather built by hand. If that's not a punchline, I don't know what is. But see, here's the thing. I'm not some wide-eyed pushover. I'm an electrical contractor. I've spent 23 years installing security systems for people who don't trust the world. Ranchers, tech millionaires, the odd doomsday prepper with more ammo than sense. If you threaten my family's keys, you get more than a new lock, you get a fortress. Brenda, with all her HOA posturing, had just kicked a hornet's nest she didn't know existed. Let me back up so you get the whole picture. My name's Miles Blackwood. I learned everything I know about grit, hard work, and not backing down from a fight in my grandfather's cabin. He built it in '63 before gated communities and fancy Mercedes SUVs found their way up the mountain. We'd spend summers there, me a scrawny kid thinking I was smarter than the old man breathing in sawdust while he'd say locks keep honest people honest. Dishonest folks, though, they require more creative solutions. He could fix anything, my granddad, broken engines, broken radios, broken people. When he passed away at 91, I inherited paradise. 40 acres, a trout stream, clear enough to count the pebbles, a log cabin anchored on stone he'd quarried himself. No mortgage, no liens, no complications, just freedom memories, and the kind of air that makes you believe in second chances. It didn't take long for trouble to find me. 3 months after moving in, I'm fixing up the deck when gravel crunches hard, deliberate beneath the tires of a silver Mercedes. Brenda steps out, clipboard in hand, looking like she's about to audit my soul. I knew her type. She'd blown in from Denver, reinvented herself as Pine Ridge's HOA president, and spent her days tormenting the community with compliance letters and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm here about your property violations." I stared at her, hammer and hand sawdust in my hair. "What violations?" She launched into a monologue about aesthetic standards, how my rustic log cabin didn't fit the community vision, how my solar panels were an eyesore, how my old truck lowered the neighborhood's appeal. Her Mercedes still idled in the drive, filling the air with exhaust. I told her as politely as I could muster, "This place was built before there was ever a homeowners association. My family's been here since before you could find Pine Ridge on a map." She didn't blink. "You have 60 days to comply, or we place a lien and force a sale to recover compliance costs $45,000. That's when I realized this wasn't about aesthetics. This was about power, and I'd soon discover a whole lot of money. It was the start of a land grab, and I was just the latest target. The next weeks were hell. Brenda filed a police report, claimed I'd forged my inheritance, that the cabin was community property. I spent days at the courthouse, hunched over yellowed records, drinking terrible coffee and digging until I hit gold. Colorado law required HOA charters to renew every 25 years. Pine Ridge's charter had quietly expired in 1987. Brenda's authority was about as real as monopoly money. But that wasn't all. Hidden in the records, I found Mountain Vista Development, a shell company snapping up distressed properties, always just after owners got slapped with mysterious compliance violations. The registered agent Rick Donovan, Brenda's live-in boyfriend, I filed harassment charges, requested restraining orders, and thought I'd bought some peace. Brenda escalated. She spread rumors at an emergency HOA meeting, said I'd threatened elderly neighbors, was unstable, dangerous. My friend Frank Toolbelt jangling stood up for me. Only erratic behavior I see is you filing false reports. One by one, neighbors found their voices, disabled vets, single moms, retirees, all harassed, fined, threatened with foreclosure. This wasn't personal, it was systematic. Then came the twist. After the meeting, Eleanor, a 73-year-old widow, pressed a folder into my hands. Her husband had died fighting Brenda's fake violations, believing he'd failed his family. Inside was a paper trail, every forged document, every fabricated fee, every lie. 6 families, 6 properties stolen through the same scam. Brenda was running a criminal operation hiding behind the HOA. The harassment turned physical. Unmarked trucks parked at the end of my driveway every morning, men with clipboards pretending to survey my land, always just outside the boundary of trespassing. I upgraded security, motion sensors, cameras, license plate recognition. I documented everything. Then they started breaking things. Dumped trash by the stream, cut my fence lines, vandalized my grandfather's memorial garden. But then a kid barely out of high school argued with Rick's crew. This is too far. We're supposed to harass, not destroy family stuff. He quit, but not before slipping me a manila envelope. Inside proof, contracts, payment records, target lists. Brenda had been paying crews to plant evidence, fake violations, intimidate families, and a forged condemnation order scheduled for Saturday, followed by immediate property seizure. That's when I stumbled on a survey Grandpa had tucked away, a 1961 geological assessment. The property wasn't just 40 acres of trees and trout streams. It sat on top of a fortune in rare earth minerals, lithium, cobalt, tantalum. $50 million buried under Grandpa's fishing holes and flower beds. No wonder they wanted me gone. But Grandpa had seen the future. The deed included a family ownership clause and retained all mineral rights forever. Even if they forced a sale, they'd never touch the real treasure. I realized Brenda's scheme went way beyond me. She was systematically stealing mineral rights from families who had no idea what they owned. With my documentation and the whistleblower's envelope, I had enough to blow the whole thing open. The night before the seizure, I turned my workshop into a war room. Monitors everywhere. Evidence lined up, security at maximum. When Rick's crew came creeping through the trees, armed with lockpicks, signal jammers, even bags of white powder to plant as evidence, my cameras caught everything live streamed straight to the FBI. When they tried breaking in my custom lock system, biometric, encrypted, military-grade, laughed in their faces. Monday morning, Brenda marched into an emergency town hall, waving fabricated evidence and riling up the crowd. But this time, she was met with resistance. Neighbors armed with stories and affidavits stood up one after another. Then the real fireworks, County Commissioner Janet Morse walked in, trailed by federal agents. The FBI had been investigating, and now they had the smoking gun. Brenda was arrested on the spot, conspiracy, racketeering, fraud, bribery. Rick and Janet went down too. But it wasn't over. Brenda posted bond, tried one last desperate move, a bogus environmental emergency to trigger property seizure. What she didn't know was the FBI had already seized county servers and exposed the fraud. My water was cleaner than Denver's tap. My solar panels, state-of-the-art, not a drop of toxicity. The final showdown, Rick and a crew of armed men tried to secure my property. My lock system blared alarms, called every agency from the sheriff to the FBI, and my neighbors formed a human chain across the drive. National media picked up the story suddenly. What started as a squabble over keys became the scandal that toppled a criminal empire. Court was poetry. The evidence, photos, financials, audio, video left no room for doubt. Brenda tried to glare her way out of it, but the perp walk past the families she'd ruined was the closest thing to justice I've ever seen. She got 12 years, Rick 7, Janet 5. The restitution fund returned millions to the families. The illegal mining permits were revoked and the watershed was protected for good. That's how Grandpa's little cabin became a symbol of resistance, of community, of the idea that bullies only win if we let them. My security lock design ended up licensed nationwide. We started a legal aid fund, a scholarship for kids from targeted families, a mountain heritage celebration that draws crowds every year. The cabin still stands now, a fortress host to family reunions, weekend retreats, and the occasional security pro who wants to see the lock that stopped a criminal network. And here's the real lesson, one I learned the hard way, one I wish my grandfather was here to see. Evil thrives when we're too busy, too polite, or too scared to fight back. But sometimes all it takes is a stubborn old deed, a community that refuses to be silent, and a lock designed by someone who understands just how far dishonest folks will go. So what do you think? Is there ever a right time to take the law into your own hands? Or does justice only work when we trust the system? Ever tangled with an HOA, a neighbor or a boss who thought power gave them the right to take what's yours? I want to hear your stories. Drop your own war tales, your thoughts on justice, or your lessons learned below. Because if there's one thing I know, it's that the fight never ends, it just changes locks.